these prior negative experiences stay with us, and that if they're not dealt with, they come into the classroom.
Can't be a writer if you're not a reader. You have to be a reader. I mean, you are reading all the time.
My interest in the ship started out as just the natural instinct of an engineer to solve a mystery, solve a puzzle.
What I've learned with the writing life, and that's what I try to impart, is doing what you would think is most generous or most humble or most ascetic is probably actually what's best for all those other things that you're worried about.
Welcome to Study with the Best, the magazine show about CUNY. I am Marlene. You are a young man attending CUNY. Like other guys your age, you have your typical problems. And if you are a young man of color, you have even more problems to deal with, according to a new documentary by a husband and wife team from CUNY. Take a look.
I know that I was bullied badly. Like, I'd rather have been just teased than like actually have the violence that was done to me. And like, you know, it had me feeling like I never felt safe in school. So like when I got into junior high, I started to lash out anyway at anybody that came to me. I got paranoid. And like when I got in high school, I didn't know how to do school. I was like, this isn't me. This isn't for me.
It is about the lived experiences of young men of color, the experience of trauma, negative experiences around schooling, previous schooling experiences before, after, during school. These prior negative experiences stay with us, and that if they're not dealt with, they come into the classroom.
When you go to a new environment, you don't feel safe at all. You feel like, okay, if I make the wrong type of first impression, it's going to stick with me for the rest of the semester, year, whatever the case may be. Understand? So you be very careful about how you move or who you talk to.
This film was intended to help counselors in training, current counselors, for educators, definitely educators, really see these students in a different light. Because sometimes when people are traumatized, they feel very much alone and isolated. So being able to talk about it and to be heard has really been beneficial and healing for the young men.
I lost my best friend who actually went to the high school due to a fight in Union Square, I think. And I was like 207 pounds, and like that rapidly went to like 120, 130. And I was depressed, like I didn't eat, I didn't do nothing.
I think people are just happy that there's this focus on young black men, especially in light of what's going on in today's society, where young black men feel under attack, and then they're not engaged when they come into the college classrooms. So we're trying to change that.
Can you talk about the journey that got you into that group where you were able to discuss with your peers? I mean, it didn't start there, but how did you get there, to that point where you felt comfortable talking about some real personal issues with your peers?
I feel like she warmed me up. She didn't just, oh, you're going to do a documentary. But we really had to talk to each other, bring an article to class that represents you. I ain't want to do that. I brought my controller, my Xbox controller. This represents me. Right? Yeah. That represents me. But she warmed me up, so I felt comfortable just to explain myself so everybody see where I'm coming from. If it wasn't for me warmed up, I wouldn't have said nothing. I just sat there, went home, and did it day by day. Did it again and again.
It hit you on close to home, whatever, because it's my second death for the year. I had one in the beginning of the year, my close friend, who was just in the park before springtime, just doing working out and all that. New Year's, he died.
It felt good hanging out with people that actually knew what you were, the bags you were holding. You understand? Mm-hmm. So it's like you can take it off and they can help you carry it. You understand? It was basically relieving.
Fan, fantastic. Those two young men were absolutely fantastic that we talked with earlier tonight. What's more fantastic is they mirror what I think happens to not only young men, but happens to too many students in anywhere, but particularly in New York and Brooklyn, since we're in Brooklyn. But they have recovered, and they are recovering because they have faculty and advisors who are supportive. And the more we get all of the campus communities around CUNY engaged in work with students, the more successful the students are going to be.
Where do you see yourselves 5 to 10 years from now?
Ooh, I see myself sitting right next to Bill Gates. Something, yeah, we did it big, man. Another year.
Great moments in CUNY history. Hunter College, located on Lexington Avenue between 68th and 69th Streets, was originally for women only. An 1870 offshoot of Female Normal High School, it existed to train teachers, one of the few careers open to women at the time. Its Manhattan location began enrolling men in 1964. Hunter College, founded by Irish immigrant Thomas Hunter, one of the most colorful and diverse colleges in the CUNY system.
I grew up in a huge family. You always had to find a quiet place, and that quiet place was in my head. So I found my imagination took me to places that were just wonderful. It could take me anywhere. And I think back now, and I think that that's probably what was making me a writer. You can't be a writer if you're not a reader. You have to be a reader. I mean, you are reading all the time. At all times, you have the books on your bedside, you're in the subway, whatever you're doing, you're reading, you're filling your head with the way in which a writer is able to create images out of words. They're just black and white symbols that you're working there. And how is the writer able to do that, to transmit that? And those are your teachers, you're learning to do that. Emotional response of the character. So let's start. The thing about beginning those sentences, I advise them to learn the craft. There is the art of writing, but there is the craft. The craft is what is the best way to get your story across. What is the common thread? What's connecting that story that you said to the story you're going to? I think of writing like you have like a ball of twine, and you give the reader the one end of it. And you must never cut that twine, because if you ever cut it, that's it. They're not going to go back and scramble back to get that ball of twine.
The second half of your story is, for all intents and purposes, a completely different story that just happens to have the same main character.
One of the ways they can learn the craft is to read books that they love, books that interest them. And after they've read the book that interested them and they loved, and they can't put the book down, they're just going with the book, then take that book and try to find out why. All the stories we're reading today, we want to look and see how the writer unfolded the story. What holds our interest in plot? What is it we follow? The character. And so if you cared about the character, you are willing to go through the twists and turns with that character all the way through the plot till the writer is ready to let you go. And so what they have to learn how to do is to create an interesting character, a character that the reader feels an emotional connection to. Hopefully that's what happened in Boundaries. You start reading that novel and you're in with the problem that Anna is facing. And so you think, how the heck is she going to get out of this? What is she going to do? What are the twists and turns here? And you go with it until it's over.
Feel your hands gently cupping me under caves and kissing the secret doors to my innermost corridor.
What I'm finding is a lot of them are writing vampire stories and zombie stories. And I'm figuring, maybe they're writing vampire stories and zombie stories because that's what's in the movies and that's what's in the books. And so I stopped them in class and I said, okay, some of you are in your early 20s, majority of them are in their early 20s. I said, why is this generation writing those stories? So I'm pushing them a little further, not just to tell the story because it's the trend, but to ask themselves, what does that story, the existence of stories like that, say about the society you're living in? What kind of comment could they make? But of course, letting them know that the story is what's important. What they give me is they keep me on my toes. I know what's going on. It's just, they stimulate me as a writer. And finally, I want to tell them that it's great joy. It's a wonderful thing to do, and it lasts you for your whole life until you, so long as your brain is working, that the brain is working, you can write. And the joy you get from it, it's wonderful, but it's work.
More on the way, but first, a message from the Chancellor.
Hi, I'm Chancellor Matthew Goldstein, pleased to present CUNY's 2011 Student All-Star Team.
In the infield, Barium Goldwater scholar Mark Barriman, National Science Foundation fellows Lena Mercedes Gonzalez and Arthur Jacob Parzignat, and Truman scholar Gareth Rhodes. In the outfield, National Science Foundation scholar Ryan Jaipal, Barium Goldwater scholar Celine Joiry, and Fulbright grant recipient Miguel Guzman. Behind home plate, Truman scholar Iodella Oti. On the pitcher's mound, Rhodes scholar Zujasha Takir. In the bullpen, Joseph Camarada, Barium Goldwater scholar, and Funleo Easterwood, Fulbright Hayes Grant recipient. And designated hitters, Math for America fellows Gian Liu and Anne-Marie Alcocer.
CUNY All-Stars, like the Yankees, our hometown champions.
I'm Barry Mitchell. 2012 marks the 100th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. And the Snug Harbor Cultural Center's Noble Maritime Collection on Staten Island commemorates the tragedy with Titanic, a centennial exhibition of contemporary art. Anne-Marie McDonnell is a Brooklyn College alumna and one of the artists.
I've done several pieces for the Titanic exhibit, but the one piece I wanted to show you was one of the handmade books that I made for the show. And it says, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic is an act of futility. However, one survivor claims a raft of deck chairs saved him.
Titanic was the largest luxury passenger liner of its time. She left Southampton, England, bound for New York when she collided with an iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean and sank on her maiden voyage. Of the more than 2,000 on board, over 1,500 lost their lives. So, what's left to say about the Titanic? Plenty, according to marine forensics expert Richard Woytowich.
At the same time that the Titanic was being built, her sister ship, the Olympic, had just been launched. White Star Line had contracted with Harlan and Wolff for a series of 3 ships. And trying to build 3 ships in close succession was putting a heavy load on all of the supply industries. Some researchers have suggested that they couldn't make enough rivets fast enough, and for this reason, the builders had to accept some lesser quality rivets in building the Titanic, and this may have contributed in some way to the disaster.
Professor Woytowich teaches computer engineering technology at CityTech, CUNY's New York City College of Technology. The professor and these artists are all members of the Noble Museum.
I work with a group called the Marine Forensics Committee. I happen to be a member of the Society of Naval Architects and Marine Engineers. Marine forensics as a field is essentially investigating casualties at sea.
And the way the Titanic split in 2 in James Cameron's 1997 movie, today we're learning may not be completely accurate.
My research is basically into how the Titanic broke up. There are still a number of people who are holding on to the idea that the ship broke from the top down. If the ship broke up the way I believe that it did, and the way that my analysis shows that it probably did, then most of the breakup was happening very close to the waterline or even under the waterline, where the survivors really wouldn't see it. The team of engineers who worked with James Cameron on his recent special made a finite element model of the complete ship. I was very relieved to find that their results were fairly close to mine.
Both technology and art figure in the work of artist Rudolph Montanez.
And behind me is my artwork. The title is Texting, a Titanic artwork using Morse code. According to the books, these are the messages that were actually sent. The location of the ship, the call sign of the ship, and a plea for help.
My interest in the ship started out as just the natural instinct of an engineer to solve a mystery, solve a puzzle. As the work has gone on, I've become more aware of the human element.
My name is Diane Mattias. It's called the Bride's Chair, and it's a teak deck chair. The shadow image, the silhouette, is tipping my hat to Edwardian lace making. This is young Mrs. Mary Marvin. She was aboard the Titanic that night with her husband. They had just married and been on a trip to Europe. And along with many other honeymooners, the wife survived and the husband didn't. He was 19 years old.
I do believe that this combination of engineering, technology, and humanity is why this particular wreck still has us fascinated after 100 years.
Writing literally is easy. It is easy. When you're writing, there's nothing more joyous, nothing easier, nothing clearer. I think all the hard work, so much of it is the psychological. It's about engaging, it's about sitting down, it's about finding your way into the work. I guess I believe fiction is a moral act. Writing, if you are a writer in this life, I feel like writing is probably what saved you, and it's curative, and at some point in your life where you were hopeless, you found hope, or where you needed direction, you found direction. It's this idea where if fiction has touched you in that way, that's probably what brings you to dedicating your life to it. My name is Nathan Englander, and I teach in the Fiction MFA here at Hunter. It's not about moving copies, it's not about making money. What I've learned with the writing life, and that's what I try to impart, is doing what you would think is most generous or most humble or most ascetic is probably actually what's best for all those other things that you're worried about. You know, just concentrating on the work, you know, is all that there is. There is simply only the work, and I think if you scream that at your students for 2 years straight, there is only the work, your obligation is to story, and you tell them nothing else, that they will come out stronger.
When I'm really trying to write a story, my obligation is more to try and write something true. And what that means for me in fiction is I'm trying to write something that sounds true to me if I was going to read it aloud, or if I'm going to read it to a friend of mine or to a family member or to a stranger, it hopefully will sound true to them.
If you're honest and generous with your characters, then you can write a true story, no matter how fictive or imagined it is true for that voice.
You can't give someone voice. You know what I'm saying? They have to do the work. They have to have the voice. They have to have the imagination. You bring it all there, but I can't even tell you, this idea, can writing be taught? The distance between potential and execution, I really believe in these programs. I really think, because I experienced that. I feel like I can't even tell you how I came away a different person after my years of study.
I don't think at the time you see yourself getting better from it, but I look back on what I was writing a year ago and I do think that I'm getting better. I do think there's a change in the work, and I think when you write something, you're asking someone to spend 3 days or 3 weeks reading what you wrote. So I think learning restraint and learning about some sort of back and forth with a reader has been a great thing about workshop.
Watch the husband and wife walking down Broadway together. Even looking at their backs, even from a distance, you can see the wife is making big sweeping points, advising. There is wisdom being shared. But she is a kindly woman, the wife. You can see this too. Because every few paces the wife slows and reaches toward the husband, hangs an arm around his shoulder, and pulls him close. There is clearly love between them. Communicating through craft, through fiction, that something has to be in order, some system, some balance has to be there. And I feel like so much, of that in the writing life is just exposing that system of weights and measures, how to live, how to work, how to communicate.
The writing life and the life of a working artist comes with rigor and hardships and mandates an astounding sort of work ethic so that the pieces continue to be written, so that the work is further developed and engaged with daily.
Writing and just being able to write and just being able to pursue stories, pursue, a way of living that involves just finding stories and making stories and taking part in stories. That's my ultimate dream. That's exactly what I want to do.
I have to say, I wouldn't be here if it didn't enrich my life too. That's the idea. I'm a full-time writer. I've been a full-time writer. I will stay a full-time writer. This idea of making the time for the teaching is because it ends up being a two-way street. I feel like on my end, I learn as much from them as they do from me. Gubernia just means state, she says, like a county. To say you were born in Gubernia would be like saying you were born in state, as in New York State or Washington State. To be from there is to be from everywhere or nowhere, I say. Thanks so much.
Thank you for watching Study with the Best. For all things CUNY, you can visit our website at cuny.edu. We are also on Facebook, and you can tweet us at CUNY TV. See you next time.
Hi, I'm Ciro Galeno. I'm the Assistant Director of the Noble Maritime Collection at Snug Harbor Cultural Center in Staten Island, New York. This is Titanic, a centennial exhibition of contemporary art. One of our artists is Mary Rounsfield from Bristol, England. Her grandmother's brother, Edward Harris, worked and died on the Titanic along with his sister's fiancé, Michael Rogers. She created this series of etchings featuring facsimiles of actual documents relating to her great-uncle's drowning.
I'm Denise Mumm, and I'm the artist who made Dancing on the Titanic. In 1912, the tango hit Europe like wildfire. And I'm sure that these sophisticated passengers who were just coming back from Europe knew how to dance the tango. I think of them as sort of ghosts, and I like to hold that idea of them as being dancing rather than, floundering, just sort of gently disappearing.